It's cheaper pop culture time, which means more cheap and more peep. Or something like that. You know what? It's really hard to rhyme, which is probably why rappers deserve just so much respect. But sometimes, no matter how much respect you've earned, you still have to fight for it. And speaking of rappers fighting, did you buy that? Did that transition seem organic to you? No? Well, who cares? Fuck you. Today's topic is... Def Jam Vendetta is a 2003 video game that shows what happens when one of the worst wrestling video game manufacturers of all time decides to give up and just start making a rap game instead. And the results were surprisingly pretty good. Allow me to explain. Around the turn of the millennium, the 2001 to be exact, wrestling companies were playing hot potato with each other's video game producers. And with the WWF destined to create the near wrestling apocalypse in just a few years, they figured why not ruin things for all wrestling video games as well. With the botch ending of Starrcade 1997, Goldberg's streak on its way towards the end, and the NWO split in two, WCW had begun circling the drain by late 1998. But at least their video games were still good. At least that was the thought of some shot calling the WWF, because the House of McMahon was about to snatch up WCW's video game producer, THQ, which banged out hit games like WCW Nitro, WCW vs. NWO World Tour, and WCW NWO Revenge. And the latter two would be the basis for hit WWF games such as WrestleMania 2000 and No Mercy. Oh, and by the way, WrestleMania 2000 came out in 1999. Very misleading. Now, prior to this, the WWF had a deal with Acclaim, a deal which had been in place for around a decade, but the WWF broke up with them to get with WCW's main squeeze as a precursor to the kill shot that they were about to take on Turner. THQ ended up staying with the WWE until the company shut down, and then the WWE would move on to the 2K brand. And as for Acclaim, well, they ended up in the lap of ECW, and when the dust settled, let's just say the only promotion that succeeded out of this whole video game company circle jerk was, of course, the WWF. Now, what does this all have to do with rap? Which I'm sure is a departure from the norm, since many of you are probably used to just asking, what does this ramblings have to do with wrestling? By the way, I'm not sorry for the math video or the parkour one. So, back on target. Well, ECW got WWE sloppy seconds and WWE stole WCW's girl, WCW then went on to EA, which was kinda like after Macho Man broke up with Miss Elizabeth and then brought Gorgeous George around, and everyone was like, what are you doing here? And you look good, but there is no way this is gonna end well. Because after WCW Mayhem and the affront to all things good in wrestling video games, that is WCW Backstage Assault, and WCW being bought by the WWF, EA was without a wrestling company to make games for. And so they decided to go with the next best thing. A rap company? Yeah, somehow that was the most adjacent thing they could find. But while their WCW games were total garbage water, somehow rapping rap around a wrestling game improved the design? Because believe it or not, this was actually a really fun game. Electronic Arts borrowed the Aki engine from their WCW predecessor and made a gameplay style that seemed suspiciously similar to what THQ was doing with No Mercy. Now, the plot of the game centers around you fighting your way to the top and defeating the game's big boss, D-Mob. Now, you start off by choosing which character you want to play as, either Proof, who is one of those nutty BMX guys, Briggs, who is a former soldier who was dishonorably discharged, Tank, not Abbott, and the most 90s name for a 2000s video game fighting character, DJ Spider. But despite all this variety, it actually makes no difference whatsoever, since the story mode is going to be exactly the same no matter who you choose. And what is that story, you may ask? Well, you begin your fighting quest. Hey, why don't they just make a Wu-Tang Kung Fu game where you play as the members of the Wu-Tang Clan in rap? Just makes total sense. Why don't they do this? Okay, well anyway, you start this game by helping your friend Manny out by taking his spot in the Fighting League. From there, you face a whole host of different rappers. You take on Scarface on his block, Nore Noriega, Luda Rollout, the tag team of the Supreme Neck Protectors, Redman and Method Man, as well as DMX and X gonna give it to you. Oh, and by the way, your girlfriend is Christina Milian, which by itself makes the game way better than anything that EA put out for WCW. Now, the game featured some standard wrestling fare mixed with a whole bunch of special moves and was just a whole lot of fun in general. And it was also wildly successful, so much so that they made a sequel. And personally, I think we haven't had enough, and it's time for this series to make a long overdue return. Now, that's gonna wrap it up for this edition of Cheaper Pop Culture. Join me next time, because